Okay, it has been pointed out that it's starting to kind of turn into the all indie, all time thing. We need to get back to some proper Star Trek here, and not just from other people popped in and when I'm doing the live updates. And, hey, I thought it was supposed to be a Star Trek channel. Actually, to be specific, this channel is about whatever interests me at a given time. It's primarily Star Trek, but I have many other interests besides Star Trek. Okay. I will occasionally do a Doctor Who video. I've done some James Bond videos. I'll do some comic stuff when it comes up. And as far as the current thing, yes, the issue with Indy is kind of urgent. I think mainly because the situation is rather fluid. It's changing by the hour sometimes by the minute. Prompted me to just jump on here and post an update. But again, I need to balance it out. I'll grant that, and I need throw some other stuff here. I think a large part, because I know my hair is not that gray, but it's reflecting the light so damn much. I'm looking like Santa Claus now. All right. So we left off. It was just after the making of Where No Man Has Gone Before, I think, and getting all that together. And I still would wish someone had been taking some pictures on that last day on set. And they're doing the Delta Vega thing. They can't get that last. And in comes Lucy in her sparkling cocktail dress and the flaming head red hair, and with a broom to sweep stuff out of the way of the camera so they can get that last tracking shot, and boom, okay, done. We're wrapped. We're done. We're going. Time to uncork the champagne. So going along here, they filmed that. Okay, between now I think let's see, when did they film Where No Man Has Gone Before? Because it's going into if I can find that. No, the Where No Man's Gone Before was delivered to NBC just after New Year's Day, 1966, and final damages. The whole thing was like 7 production days. It turned into 9. 1 month post production schedule stretched into 5. They estimated it costing $216,000, but again, Bob Justin told $355,000 was the total. And the board of directors at Desley wanted to end the thing right there because they were a bunch of grumpy old men. But let's see, they finished editing the thing. Delivered to editing on July 30th at 65 and music scores scored in November, and it was cleared and shop in January 66. Fortunately, the way this thing is all set up, I'm having to back up here. Well, they had all kinds of fun because they were still over at the old Culver City lot, which wasn't built. Okay, it was July of 65 when they started filming. And during that time, between July 65 and February 66, Shatner was a busy guy. Okay, he filmed Star Trek, he filmed Alexander somewhere in there. He did segments of 12 O'Clock High, The Fugitive, The Big Valley, Bob Hope Presents Christmas Theater, and Gunsmoke. And he also had a recurring role on Dr. Kildare. It was Dr. Carl Noyes. And Nimoy had supporting parts on The Virginia, Combat, Man Called Shenandoah, Daniel Boone, Get Smart, Gunsmoke, and there was an art house film, Death Watch, he did with Vic Morrow. George Takei was bouncing around, had 11 jobs between July and February, and going around. Jimmy Doohan was busy. He did A Man Called Shenandoah, Bewitched, Blue Light, Laredo, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Virginian, twice on the FBI, and The Fugitive, and a recurring part on Peyton Place, and a feature film, Scalp Lock. And Roddenberry's busy too, because he had a few more pods crank out. One called Police Story, nothing to do with the show in the 70s, but that was also his way of sneaking in DeForest Kelley, because he wanted D. Kelly originally as a doctor way back with The Cage. But again, at that point, D. Kelly was still very much identified as a heavy. He was playing villain roles, nasty gunfighters and stuff like that. And when but they figured, well, there's Paul Fix is a bit, no, John Hoyt was a bit old, and then they did the second pilot, and they still didn't want it. They got Paul Fix in there. It's like, okay, he's a little fat, but when they did Police Story, he cast D. Kelly as the medical examiner, and also recommended $20. Go change your haircut. He was still slicking it back a bit. It's kind of a JFK type thing. And that, it changed his look. But also, he got him in a lab coat, and Grace Lee Whitney was in that Police Story 2 playing his assistant. That's also where you get Steve Inhat, who we later knew as Lord Garth. And Malachi Throne was in there, too. He was bouncing around. He was in, if you recall, It Takes a Thief. He was... God, no, I'm playing... Robert Wagner's handler. But... and it could have been good because, a cop show written by an actual cop helps. And there was another pilot he's working on, The Long Hunt of April Savage. It was actually written and created by Gene's old boss, Sam Rolfe, from Have Gun Will Travel. And Herb Solis, he kind of laughed at him. No, Dorothy Van Tannen said, no, bullshit. He knew Sam a long time, was a very good friend. And they were friends afterwards, too. He did not slough off this way. He put work in it. He handed it to Gene because he knew he'd do a good job on it. This one was going to star Robert Lansing. It was a half-hour Western. And actually, it did sell because for the year, starting season, 66, 67 season, they had successfully sold 3 pilots. Mission Impossible to CBS, Star Trek to NBC, and Long Hunt of April Savage to ABC. And then, of course, we got, the inevitable stingy board meeting at Desilu. And they kind of laid down the law. We can't do all 3 of these shows. They wanted to dump Star Trek, because that was obviously going to be the most expensive one, at least in their eyes. Actually, it was kind of a toss. Mission Impossible was also pretty pricey. And Mannix actually went, which comes on a little later, around the same time, but kind of tagging along after these were sold. It's like that was actually a little more expensive, believe it or not. And that's the thing. April did sell, but somehow it just didn't make it when the finally came to air. That one has a little something because no, there was no bad blood between Roddenberry and Sam Rolfe. They stayed friends all through there. In fact, Rolfe got a ride. He wrote an episode of Next Gen and for DS9 later on. But there was a junior executive from ABC who was seen as kind of meddling by the name of Harv Bennett, who showed up, and Roddenberry said, get rid of this guy. It's like, that would come back to bite him in the butt a bit. Well, we'll get to that when all is said and done. But we had a big meeting. And let's see, when they're going through the whole thing of what these shows they could not afford, those atypical TV shows, cause at the time, it's like, on the Desilu lot, in the Hollywood facility, but the Melrose Street place, you had Lucy Show, Andy Griffith, Gomer Pyle, My 3 Sons, Hogan's Heroes, Family Affair, That Girl, and Hey Landlord. And also we're shooting Lassie, Rango, and when it was in town, I Spy. I Spy did a lot of location shooting. And then Mannix, would show up. It was another Bruce Geller show, along with Mission Impossible. And that was a very busy lot at the time. And then Herb Hustle, imagine get, Star Trek and Mission Impossible, a couple of sound stages, up to the north end of the lot, and each of them, 10 office spaces apiece, And of course, they haven't hit the ground running. They've had 2 shots of this now. And again, I discussed previously, and the whole thing. Oh, it's unprecedented. No, it wasn't unprecedented. It was unusual in the grand history of television. It was unusual to have 2 pilots, but it wasn't unheard of. In fact, at the very time that they were shooting Star Trek second pilot, they were also shooting a second pilot of a sitcom idea they were trying to sell to NBC. So not only was it not unprecedented, it wasn't unprecedented for Desilu or for NBC to order a second pilot or to produce a second pilot. So yeah, let's just dispense with that piece of history right now. But, when it came time, okay, they're going through, and the grumpy old men are arguing which shows you can keep, which ones you can't, and they're all wanted. They only had one board member on there who was in favor of keeping Star Trek. The rest of them was like, dumb. Because it was a weird show. And it was too expensive because they had to build everything from scratch pretty much, or find something unusual. They couldn't get off the rack. You couldn't have Kirk show up on the bridge of the Enterprise in a Brooks Brothers suit, or put the crew in just regular Navy seamen, just throw a weird design. No, you had to create all this stuff. And that's where the budgetary things really comes in. It was one of the most expensive shows on television, but when you're having to invent everything from whole cloth, that money doesn't go very far. Mission Impossible again was just about as expensive, but they could go off the rack. Very little was. There wasn't a whole lot that had to be invented for that show. In fact, they actually used a lot. There was a lot. Some costumes and stuff were used in both shows. In fact, Leslie Parrish did a guest spot. I think it was Mission Impossible. They had her in the same Grecian gown she wore in Who Mourns for Adonais. And yes, it's pronounced Adonais. It's from a poem. Although saying Who Mourns for Adonis, it still gets the point. You're who's going to mourn for these mythological characters? But they're going through it and hearing all the things, but she's following Desi's plan for the studio. She wants to do new and inventive stuff and make a place welcome to creative people. It was like, I think it was it was either Jimmy Comack or George Clayton Johnson. It was the kind of place that's like when you're all struggling comedians in the Catskills talking about what you're going to do when you've got your own place, and you're going to get all these people that have been struggling and trying and give them a place to really get in there and create. This was it. This was Lucy and Desi set this thing up to bring in people and let them create and put in some innovative stuff. And Star Trek fit that thing. Another sitcom didn't fit that thing. And anybody can do a sitcom at this point. They were doing plenty of them. I think the original, the previous Tenants in Star Trek Soundstage was my favorite Martian. Another thing, and that the big thing is that they were doing all these shows for other studios. Their main stock and trade at that point was renting out studio space to other studios. Because all these things here, they were not all of them were Desilu shows. You can go check the credits. A lot they're filmed at Desilu, but for some of the else or network stuff. But this was a chance for them to make their own shows on their own lot. Desi and Lucy didn't buy the RKO lot to be landlords. Okay, they wanted for a place to create. And people said it was a very different place when Lucy still owned it as opposed to when Paramount took it over. It became a much less welcoming place. Okay, because you can when it was the early days, you could wander the place, you could visit the sets, talk and really, furiously working on your scripts in their head. Let's see. But going through all this, heard all the things, all the arguments, and Lucy looked at her, nodded her head. That was all he needed. Star Trek's to go. We're going. And yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened to The Long Hunt of April Savage, because it was on the ABC schedule originally. It was dropped in favor of the Tammy Grimes show, and later partnered up with Bewitched as opposite Star Trek. And there was a fight between those two shows, but going on here, they hit the pavement running because time's a race and we ain't got much time. So we had all the the production people set up here. We got Justman stayed on as associate producer. Morris Chapnick as Roddenberry's a production assistant. Matt Jeffries is now the art director. Now that Pedro Gizman's gone. George Morgoff on lighting. Bill Tice on wardrobe. Hua Chang with the gadgets thing. Although that's another story entirely. In fact, Trek World got a great video on that, on the crap they put him through. Because it was just, and the way he came up though, and he deserved much better than what he got. And Kellum DeForest was their. They worked with all the Disney shows, but he worked. He was doing the Kellum DeForest research. And they had to go through and make sure they weren't crossing over things. And let's see, let me skip some of this here. Joe D'Agosta was he'd unofficially helped with booking talent before, and now he's their casting director. So that's the thing, and just getting everything in place. And Dorothy Fontana was part of it. I mean, she started off as Roddenberry's secretary back during The Lieutenant, but she'd already had some story sales before that under the name Dorothy C. Fontana, which was kind of astounding when she started stuff. And you can't do that. No, women don't sell. Well, I have. She already had listed credits, but they kind of forced her to switch over to to change it to DC Fontana. But that one's like anybody. Yeah, there she is over there. Oh, that's her. Okay. And got in John D.F. Black as story editor. and Mary Stillwell, soon to be Mary Black. They got him, and he got put through the mill by Roddenberry. Roddenberry loved doing practical jokes, and it's probably around this time because I don't think he knew Major Leo, because there was a thing where setting him up for everything, where it's to interview a promising young starlet here. I don't got time for it. You take care of it, John. And then comes Major and starts going on about how she'd do anything to get on the part, and starts slowly stripping, And John's getting, wait a minute here, because I think he may have already been involved with Mary out there, but it starts, and Major's getting nervous because she's getting down to nothing much left here, and then and the time that's just as it's really starting to get down to the skivvies there, and that butts in, John, what's going on? And the phone, I think he may have been married to him. John, your wife's on line 1. I think he loved doing stuff like that. But anyway, you get Irving Feinberg signed in for, he was my age, actually a little younger when he got signed on as a prop man. Jimmy Rugg was a special, the difference between special effects and visual effects. Visual effects is like the stuff where you got to go through the optical printer and animated stuff. Special effects is what's done on stage, like explosion going off or something shorting, something physically there. That's special effects. If it's got to be animated or added in later, that's visual effects. They're related, but they're not the same thing. That's Jerry Finnerman was a camera operator, but also he helped set a lot of the very distinct lighting schemes on there. So. But he left by the third season. That's why there's a very distinct change in the look. But going along here and talking about D. Kelly, his career started in the Paramount lot. His first movie was in Paramount, and he had done a movie. Let's see, it was a 1956 appearance on You Are There. It was a CBS thing, kind of a educational type show where they would reenact historical things. And Dee played Ike Clanton, gunfight at the OK Corral. So moving on along, let's get to the point. And talking about Grace Whitney. Yeah, she was in the pilot for Jeffrey Hunter's series Temple Houston in '63. That would have been interesting. And then Jimmy Doohan on Hail to the Chief on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. And going to the thing of which characters might be dropped. It was weird. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get on to trying to find. This is something because we've all seen the stage layout of where the Enterprise sets were. Next door at stage 10, if I can get this shown up here, that's the planet set. That's where they did all the planetary stuff there. And occasionally move stuff around there where they, that little ship set off the side. But for the most part, that's where they did that. Let's get on to the Corbomite maneuver. This is essentially Star Trek's third pilot. And if the effects weren't so hard to get, again, part of it is, the infrastructure of how to do this type of thing on a weekly basis wasn't there yet. And that's why, the early days, it's like Howard Anderson was when they're trying to get opening titles set up. Where's my bookmark? Oh, here. I don't have to look for this again. Bob Justman and Gene Roddenberry go over to Howard Anderson Company, and this is Desilu's on lot, visual effects people. They're the people that they got. They were determined. We got people here. We're going to do it ourselves. It turned out no. You end up eventually having to hire out about half the effects houses in Hollywood to get the show done in time. But at the time, they're still trying. And I said I covered this in previous ones, in the previous couple of where they tried to, they wonder, we need opening titles or what the hell's going on? And Roddenberry and Justman both go over there, and the guy is clearly visibly shaken. He's nervous, and it finally just blurts out in tears, "You're never going to make your air date!" And so he just leaves the I was just crying his eyes out in hysterics. Ah! It's like, and I think Justman goes chasing after him to try and calm him down, but then they come back, and Roddenberry and Justman kind of look at each other and, okay, let's see what we've got. And they go in the editing room and see what usable footage they have. And it's like, okay, well, we reused the flyby shot. We got a couple of slow flybys. We got an orbital thing. Okay, there, that'll work. Okay. But they're going through and getting everything set up. And so let me get back to what we got here. So we got the Corbomite maneuver at the end of everything. If everything was, and this is why I don't like going by air date order, because it was totally arbitrary. It was meant to just what is ready for airing now. If this had been ready for airing, it had gone, and it had been much better reception, I think, because it's a much better episode. But it also stands out. What is like in the line, and McCoy says, "What's the mission of this ship, Doctor?" To seek out and contact alien life and demonstrate what our high-sounding words mean. That's like originally started off the March 66 outline called Danger Zone. Very rough. A lot of the characters, were still out there. And it was paid for the outline, rewrote it for free, and at that point they changed the name to the Corbomite maneuver. Mainly emphasizing the bluff at the end. Again, and there was no exchange between chess and it was just totally Kirk pulling out of his butt. But let's flesh it out a bit. And let's see stuff here. But some of the stuff, it's like there was a lot more busy work in there. People getting there were some more lines here and there, but I think eventually. Someone suggested Michael Dunn as Baylock, which would have been fun, but also would have been expected, because he'd already made a name for himself on the Wild Wild West as Dr. Lovelace. But it's like, no, wait a minute, hold on. And Roddenberry was always thinking off the reservation as far as casting goes. It's like casting the Telosians. He went for women, kind of little smaller women. Something else, a bit of but the government are big heads and do masculine voices there, and they'll throw people off and give you a better feeling that they're kind of an alien thing. And in this case, came in that we get a kid who can say the lines, but dub him with a more mature voice, and you'll believe it more that he's an alien. And again, Michael Dunn would have been obvious, but you bring in Clint Howard, all of like 4 or 5 years old. They did want to shave his head. But I think his dad rants Howard that, no, he's still a working actor. We got this Gentle Ben thing coming up here. No, he needs his hair. And he's not gonna put him in a wig. So they get the skull cap with a little headband around it. Okay, we're done. And they're filming that, and he likes Clint still to this day. If I could get him online, it'd be fun to talk to him on that. But I think it was whatever it is they had in the Tron. He hates to this day. I think it was like pink grapefruit juice or something. And he tried to get, like, even his dad, can you just put some 7-Up or something? Let's make it at least taste it. And, it's like, ugh. But, and again, the dad's like, you're a professional, you're going to drink it, and you're going to like it. Okay. Okay. It's like, just get the scene, get it over with. Okay. You never have to taste this shit again. But originally, Bailey was the communications officer. There was no Uhura yet. They hadn't cast Luciana Nichols yet. And when they brought her in, there was no character. That's why she read Spock's lines originally. And I like the Spock character. What's she like? It's like, well, let's see. I think Leonard Nimoy might have something to say about that. And then they continue on the edition. Eventually, they joke that. Call down front. See if Nimoy signed his contract yet. Because he blew away. And, of course, the big reason why Roddenberry wanted it is that, besides Major, Nichelle was his other piece on the side. Quick little story on that one. He tried and make it all one big, happy, open relationship. But, because he tried this by driving Nichelle over to Major's place, which I think he had near the studio. Didn't tell Majel about it, but they knew each other, so he pulls up and he's there when they open. Oh, Nichelle, you know Gene? And yeah, and I guess they had a happy little talk there. Didn't go into it, but then on the as they're driving off, she you son of a bitch. No, I'm not doing this. So I think that was probably the end of that particular thing. They remained friends, but I think that was the end of the hanky panky stuff. Because again, it's a different thing. No, it's one thing if your wife who I don't know. Majel, I know, but I like Majel. Maybe we're friends. No. Although again, she would still do other things, like when it came time to bring in Gene Coon to become the new line producer. Part of the interview process was as they're talking there, and Gene, and in comes Nichelle from the back thing, wearing nothing but one of Gene's sweater vests. And the fact that Gene Coon continued with the interview, did not bat an eyelash, that confirmed, okay, yeah, he's the right guy. He can handle the craziness we have around here. But yeah, they proceeded onward. They filmed the thing. Again, that's what. But Bailey being the original, that's why he has the thing in his ear, and talking about picking up this thing, and they had to finesse it. Coming through my navigation means, why do you have that thing in the first place? But that far into the show, who cares? Too late to ask questions. But it's kind of like, this is where Nimoy started to get a handle on Spock, because I think it was Joe Sargent was the director. Because previously it was still a lot of yelling involved, but he was still trying to how to get a handle of it. Because the first few episodes, it was like he hadn't found the character yet. Character hadn't found him. They were kind of bumping in the corridor. But when the thing is like everyone, this big, gigantic, huge ship comes in, and everyone's kind of losing their minds, and Spock just goes, fascinating. It's like, that's your handle right there. Everyone's going crazy. You're curious. You want to know more. That's how your character, and that helped build Nimoy's mind. Okay, how Spock operates. And again, and the little where Spock makes his recommendation of the chest and the correct. That's your best recommendation. And you get Nimoy almost. I regret that I have no. It's like get the little hint at the emotional struggle and the Vulcan struggle. Like I said, everything is there in this episode. That's why I rank it as one of the best of the entire franchise. Just in the sense of, this is your complete package right here. This is Star Trek. That's why I say, you want to start somewhere? Start here. Not even with the pilots. The pilots are fun to go back to, but start with the Corbomite maneuver. Because there you got the entire thing right there laid out. You got, the ship is out there. It's charting unknown and unseen areas before. It's like, we're the first to get this far. And they come across something weird. It threatens the ship. Do you see they do shoot the phasers to blow the thing up, and then it's like, okay, what do we do now? Go further. We gotta find out what's going on. And they meet the bigger ship, and then you get several minutes there of we're gonna blow you up because you were obviously a thing, and they're agonizing. One guy flips his lid on the bridge. You bring a bunch of wind up tin soldiers. But it's also nice that nobody dies. You get a lot of tense action there, and Shatner really earns it, I think. And he thinks his way out of the situation. It's not done with just blowing away bad guys. It's actually and you make a new friend at the end. They pass the test and they meet Baylock, and they're like, okay, yeah, it was a pleasure testing you, Captain. It's like, oh, really? And I say it is the complete thing. It's all thing right there in a package. That's your perfect starting episode. And unfortunately, because of the thing, it didn't air until it was like the first episode before the Menagerie, the two-parter, which itself was done as a time-saving, cost-saving thing measure, because they were about to start missing air dates. They were running out of episodes ready to film or ready to air, because they were so backed up and stuff about piling up and playing things. And I mentioned with the Cage thing, where Bob Justman had that letter written to go and say, "You don't you dare send that letter. You're going to kill us." He did. It's like, we'll figure something out. And they but then because again, in this era, pilots often did not get aired. They were for the network to approve or not approve the show. But there were often very drastic changes. In fact, one of the examples of show getting a second pilot was the Dick Van Dyke Show. Because originally none of the cast, and even the way it was shot, was different. But it was the concept that sold him on it. But originally, it was Carl Reiner as the role of Rob Petrie, and a different wife, a different kid, an entirely different cast, really. And it was shot single camera instead of, the 3-camera with the audience. But that was one of the later examples of the multiple pilots for a single show. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, again, I covered this before. I'll go into the fact trick thing. It's like there's one back in '48. There was one that went through 4 pilots, and then when it finally did run, it died anyway. The Fibber McGee series that they went through a couple of pilots. The Great Gildersleeve went through a couple. A bunch of shows went through multiple. Went through a bunch of different pilots. It was an unusual move, but it wasn't unprecedented. And again, they went through a couple of pilots at the time they were shooting Where No Man's Gone Before. But I think if it hadn't been for the crunch of needing available episodes, we never would have seen either The Cage or Where No Man Has Gone Before. Except, we need to do something with these very expensive films we did. And they may have done another thing what they did with, the Menagerie. Make it, and that's really where you start the idea of a backstory and canon for Star Trek. Because there's always been a step in the writer's guide. The ship has some history. This is not a brand new ship. It's done other things. And occasionally we'll see some of these, past adventures come back and bite us in the butt and give us a story idea. And then the Menagerie was the case. So, was the prime example. We're not even dealing with the same captain. But Corbomite, that's where you're hitting the ground running. And again, if you really want a good feel for how the show develops and grows, you start with the Corbomite maneuver. You can watch the pilots and see, okay, here's the first attempt. Again, it was good. It was very brainy and stuff, but it wasn't what they were looking for as far as an action-adventure series goes. And then Where No Man Has Gone Before, okay, this is more like it. You got Bill Shatner in a fist fight with the god, and a couple of people dying. Okay, this is more like it. Okay, we'll buy it. And then you do the development, and now we got the first off-the-line production version of the show. The rest of them were prototypes. This is the one. So again, and I've kind of locked horns in a friendly way. Another show where they're doing reviews, they're going through an episode and watching it and thing, but they're doing air date order. And the start of the Man Trap. No, really, no, because it makes no sense if you do that. Because the only reason they started with the Man Trap is they had like 4 or 5 episodes that were completed and scored and edited and all that stuff. They're ready to air. Corbomite Maneuver wasn't one of them. You had Man Trap, Enemy Within, Mud's Women, Charlie X, Naked Time, I think was ready to go, but it's like, of all of those, none of them were really good for starting off the show with. Because they dealt with, the Naked Time, you couldn't really get the impact unless you knew these characters first. And Mud's Women was just sort of, mail order bride story. Charlie X was, teenager, coming of age with superpowers. Okay, it's kind of weird. And Enemy Within, that one's pretty dark. So that just pretty much left the Man Trap as the only one's okay, that's just a straightforward story with a monster killing people and threatening the ship. Okay, go with it. But there you go. That's, the Corbomite Maneuver. And again, John D.F. Black talked about, it was just they're starting to film it or it's coming up on the first air date. He saw Bill Shatner outside the studio, the soundstage, just kind of sitting there, lost in thought. There, Bill, what's up? This Star Trek thing. Do you think it's really going to hit? And he was really agonizing with this. Is this really going to do something? Because he had very high aspirations. He wanted to be the next Olivier when he started off in acting back, professionally in acting. And he was really wanting to do something with it, and this struck him as something. This is going to be important because he was a sci-fi fan growing up. That's one of the things he liked about doing a sci-fi show like this, because they brought in acting. People who were favorites authors, he got to do their work. You got to meet them. So, but he was really agonizing over this thing. It wasn't just a job to him. He really wanted to put a stamp on the ground and make a noise. So, all right, there we go. See, I can still do a Star Trek thing. And we'll hopefully do more of these, and hopefully the current situation I'm also dealing with will resolve quick. It's getting ugly. It's getting to extreme, but it's also looking like the wheels might be about to fall off the wagon, the whole thing, and then it's reclamation time. But try and get things back on string here, and we will talk at you later.